Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? This guy named Adam Koebel, one of the authors of Dungeon World, and he has this semi-famous quote where he says that Dungeons and Dragons has this beautiful crystalline structure for handling combat and a bunch of little BS skip buttons for everything else. And I certainly agree with that in terms of modern D&D. However, I would modify that statement just a little bit if I was talking about OSR retro clones and the older versions of D&D and the games based on it. And I would say it has a bunch of skip buttons for just about everything. So today we're not going to talk about combat and magic. I'm going to leave that for another time. It's much simpler. Combat still has a few more rules than some of the other things in the game, but it's nowhere near as complex and as tactical as it ended up being later on. So it's not a beautiful crystalline structure. But today I want to talk about skills and ability checks and how the various games handle them. So it's going to be a little bit of a blitzkrieg, and I give you a bunch of options. What can you do? Because a lot of people ask, well, how do the games handle this? What happens when you want to do some kind of skill or ability check or whatever. So I want to cover a few things first, and then just dive right in. The first thing is the assumption is with most of these games right off the bat. Some of the games say it explicitly, some of them don't. That the characters they're competent. They should be considered competent. Most of the times, when you have a starting adventuring character, they know how to ride a horse, they know how to start a fire, all that kind of good junk. So, I mean, and this is even one of the games. I forget which one says if you want to have a character that's not good at something, I mean, go ahead. You can certainly tell your game master he's not good at starting fires or riding a horse or whatever. Your choice. Anyhow, when it comes time to coming upon a task or a crisis or whatever you want to call it, where you decide I want to go do something. Narrate what you're trying to do. Narrate how you're doing it. Don't necessarily just say I'm looking for traps. We'll say, well, what are you doing? How are you looking around? How are you searching? Where are you searching? All that kind of good junk. It's a dialogue, or should be a dialogue between you and the game master. A lot of times you may not need to roll. As the game master, if you're running one of these games, you have to decide, well, do they really need to roll? Is the character good enough to do this? Or is it something that's really more important, or there's a chance of failure? And then, once the outcome happens, narrate the outcome. And, I'll throw in at the end like a little bit of a mechanic that I stole from someplace else to use, because these games, one of the things they do not generally have is a degree of success or failure, but it's very easy to insert something like that. So anyhow, the funny thing is, as I was looking through the game again, and Lamentations of the Flame Princess does not really have anything about ability checks at all in it, which is funny because I thought it did, because it's based on BX D&D, and BX, the 1981 Moldvay set, it had one of the first statements about ability checks, I believe, in any of the games of D&D. So I'm going to go first of all with how does BX and Labyrinth Lord handle this. And by the way, when I'm saying all these are either going to do one of two things for you, or maybe one of three things. First thing you might say, hey, I don't want to play these games because I hate the way abilities are handled. Fair enough. The second thing is it'll inform you like what game does what, and maybe you like that mechanic enough that you'd say, hey, I think I'd rather play that game because it does it. However, and probably to me the most important is, these games are modular. These games are all a bunch of house rules for the original, versions of D&D. So, I feel free to steal them, and just throwing that out there. If you want to play Lamentations of the Flame Princess, but like the skill system in Castles and Crusades, yank it. Anyhow, let's go on with this. BX and Labyrinth Lord. BX is the actual real version, but Labyrinth Lord, they use a D20 roll low system. So the idea is you come upon something, you say, I want to walk across this beam. Okay, well, that would be a dexterity-based event at that point. So the game master says, hey, you need to roll for that. You're going to need to roll a d20 and roll equal to or less than your ability score. And then you succeed if you manage to do that. Obviously, the higher your ability score, the easier it is for you to do those sort of things. Sometimes in the games, some people say, well, yeah, you need to just roll less than your ability score. And you can modify these rolls based on a few things. You can modify based on the class of the character. You might say that this person is a specialist and maybe they're or a thief. Maybe they're just better at doing that. You've decided in your game that's the way it's going to be. You modify it based on the situation. Is it like a skinny little thing he's going to go across, or is this big wide thing? Is it slippery or not? And you can add or subtract modifiers. +1 to 4 is probably about reasonable with a d20 roll. +4 is pretty extreme. Or -4 is pretty extreme. And then you might want to modify it based on level. Maybe every couple of levels or so, maybe you throw them a bone and say, you get to subtract 1 from this roll. Now there's a variant of this that I don't believe actually exists in any written game. I could be wrong. It's called the XD6 method. And the idea is this. What it does is it makes a bell curve. It makes things it makes it a lot less random. So it acts a lot like games that use dice pools, obviously, because you're rolling multiple dice. The idea here is it's a roll low, but you roll 3d6. Try to roll equal to or under your ability score. However, a couple things. If you want to use a positive or negative modifier in situations, I would say plus or -1 is about it. Maybe 2 for the most part, because they're a lot more powerful. There's a different way to modify these rolls. So if it's an easy task, roll 2d6. If you have a 16 dexterity, it becomes very easy to roll equal to or under your dexterity on 2d6. Trust me. However, if it's a hard task, then you make the player roll 4d6. Maybe if it's a near impossible, roll 5d6. Now these are bell curves, so it kind of mimics the idea that somebody that's competent at something has a higher ability score. They're just going to be able to succeed a lot. And the downside of that, though, is if you have a really bad ability score, if you have like a 5 or 6, you're probably never getting across that plank. Whereas you have a little bit more of a chance when you roll a d20, roll for low. Anyhow, there's another game, basic fantasy role-playing game. This handles it a little bit differently. It is a d20 roll high, and what this does, and it's going to sound very familiar to people that have played something like D20, D&D, or other games like that. A lot of games use target numbers. Uses a target number. The target number is based on your level. So if you have, I think it's like your 0 level to first level, your target number is 17, second to third level is 16, 4 to 5 it's 15, etc. It keeps going. I think at 20th level your target number is 7. Once again, you can modify that based on situation or whatever. But then once again, it's a d20 roll high, and you're just rolling for a target number, based on your character's level. It has nothing to do with the ability score at that point. So let's see, what else can we do here? And of course, if it's based on that ability too, if you're using that d20 roll high target number thing, you can say, okay, well, I'm going to add my dexterity modifier to this if I have a good dexterity. All right, it's a game called Dark Dungeons. This uses another d20 roll low variant. So it's very much like the Labyrinth Lord version. However, this game has a skill system, and there's 28 named skills, and you can add more if you want to. And they're the kind of skills you would think of in games. I'm not going to list all of them, but there are things like athletics and I think like diplomacy and all that kind of good junk. Each skill is based on an attribute. So something like diplomacy might be based on charisma. Something like athletics might be based on strength, etc. So they're all tied to abilities. At first level, everybody gets 4 points to spread around the skills, and then after that, depends on what class you are, etc. Like how often you get extra skill points. So if you're doing that thing where you're doing a d20 roll low, and you're doing a strength-based ability, so you're doing some kind of athletics, and say you've got a +2 strength, or a 16 strength, so you're trying to roll equal to or under a 16, but say you put a couple points in athletics. Well, now you get to subtract a couple for your roll, or add a couple points to your ability score, whatever way you want to do it. So now you have to roll equal to or under an 18, much easier. So you get the idea. So these skills kind of modify that. So that's another way you can go. Now here's a really interesting system by Castles and Crusades, which is a really interesting game. Another retro clone. They use a d20 roll high, and here's what they do. If you recall, in these games, there are 6 ability scores or attributes. Now, each class has one primary attribute. So if you're a fighter, it would be strength. If you're a thief, it would be dexterity. Wizard, intelligence, cleric, wisdom. However, every player gets to choose 2 more of those stats that are going to be primary attributes. So you decide that this is what this guy is really specialized in. Whether they're higher or low doesn't matter. These are your primary attributes. It's completely divorced from how good you are at these things. What your score is, and your other 3 are going to be called your secondary attributes. I believe humans get to do that with 2 extra ones. If you're a demi-human like an elf, you only get to do it with 1. So now you come across some kind of task. Now there's going to be what's called a challenge base with this. A little math, not too much math involved, so just hang on for a second. If you're coming across something that's based on a primary attribute, so say you're a thief and you want to walk across that board, okay, your target number, your primary base target number before we start adding modifiers is 12. However, if you're doing something that's based on one of your secondary attributes, so say you decided intelligence wasn't going to be one of your strong points, so intelligence is going to be a secondary attribute for you. Now your target number is 18, not higher. Next thing you know is they decide, okay, what's the challenge level And so you're going to add more to that base number that you need to hit. And it's based on a bunch of things, and based on, like, say, the hit dice of the monster that maybe set something up, or the NPC that maybe set a trap, or that kind of junk. I don't want to go into all of it, but you can add, if they're easy tasks, it's like you add 1 to 5 points, difficult, 6 to 10, etc. You can add quite a bit, actually. Then you decide, before you have to, you come up with this target number. Let's just say you add like 2 to this roll, and say it's your secondary attribute in this case. So you got to roll 20. Well, now you add your level. So say you're a 5th level specialist that's trying to do something intelligent. You add your level to that, to your D20 roll. So now you only need to hit a 15, or you need to hit 20, but you get a +5. You get to add any relevant ability score modifier. So let's say your intelligence is average, so you got nothing to add there. And then any kind of racial bonus to the roll. Say you're a human, there's no racial bonus. So okay, now you got to hit a 20. You get to add 5 to your roll. That's another way that Crusades and Crusades handle it. So it's called the siege engine. That's how they handle saving throws too. It's kind of interesting. So another way to do all that. Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. I really hope this wouldn't get this long, but there's a lot to cover. So just hang in. They have a couple things they don't really have abilities or skills listed. However, Jeff put a couple of really neat things in here I talked about a little bit before. He talked about tests of an ability score, so like tests of strength, tests of intelligence, tests of constitution, and they're a 1 in 6, 2 in 6, 3 or 4 in 6 chance, depending on how high your ability score is. So you can have some kind of test of intelligence, and you roll a d6, and say you have a score of 13, so you have a 3 in 6 chance of being able to figure out this riddle or whatever it is. Then, also tied to your ability score ability scores, not the modifiers, is extraordinary feats of. So maybe you need to do an extraordinary feat of intelligence at this point, and you've got that 13 intelligence. Well, you got an 8% chance of doing that, and these range from 0% chance to 32% chance of success. Kind of interesting the way he did that. So that's neat. Another neat way to do that is just kind of have a couple different levels of, like, okay, you want to do something relatively easy or relatively hard. Anyhow, I'll segue into thief skills now, because this is going somewhere in terms of Lamentations, the Flame Princess. So if you're still with me, congratulations. This is Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers also does this thing with thief skills where they do D12 as opposed to like percentile, because most of the original games used percentile dice for thief skills. They'd say you had a starting out 20% chance to climb walls, or not climb walls, because you had a really high chance, like 80%, but I think 20% chance to like remove traps or something. As you went higher and higher level, you got more percentage points to do that. Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea uses D12. And these things are things like climb, decipher script, hear noise, hide, remove traps, all this kind of stuff. All these games that use thief skills, by the way, let's get right to this point here. Anybody can do this stuff. They're just all pretty lousy at it, except a specialist. And also, a lot of times these percentage chances, or chances in 12, they represent like averages. You can mess with them and say, well, this is an easy trap, this is a hard trap. You can change the you can alter it just like you'd alter any other kind of skill-based sort of thing. So there's another interesting thing before I get to the Lamentations of the Flame Princess. There's a lot of talk about how the thief skills aren't all that great with percentile stuff, and there is a very common house rule out there on the web where you use the hear noise skill in Labyrinth lore to do everything, because the hear noise skill is a first specialist for thieves, is once again an X and 6 chance, so it ranges from 2 and 6 chance all the way up to like 5 and 6 chance, depending on what your level is. Anyhow, just kind of throwing that out there as a little bit of information. Lamentations of the Flame Princess has a really interesting skill system, and anybody can do these skills. And the name skills, and of course you can add more, are architecture, which is all the kind of dwarvish kind of stuff that you think of, where they're trying to figure out like what the architecture of something is. Is it sloping up or down? It gets complicated. There's a lot more stuff. Bushcraft, which is very Ranger-esque. Can you survive in the wilderness? Can you track people? Can you find food and water and all that kind of good stuff? Climb, which is like climbing sheer surfaces, like without obvious handholds. You're going to be much better at this if it's easily climbable thing. Languages, which is modified by your intelligence. Very few of them are actually modified by anything, but it's modified by your intelligence modifier. Let's see what else. Search, sleight of hand, sneak attack, which is a special one. Stealth, stealth, tinkering, which is all the find, remove traps, set devices. And there's also one for opening doors. And this really is more of a feat of strength because this is a big, iconic, stuck, heavy dungeon door. So it really means like any kind of, really, this is really heavy, dude. Can you pull or push or lift this or whatever? All of these, an average person has a 1 in 6 chance. The only two that are modified by ability scores at all are opening doors, which is modified by your strength modifier, and which beats the strength, and the ability to know a language, and that's modified by your intelligence modifier. Everything else really isn't modified by them at all. Sneak attack is kind of an interesting one because it's your not sneak attack, rather. Yeah, the sneak attack. It's sorry, it's what's your damage multiplier going to be if you actually attack somebody by surprise, the old thief backstab, or sneak attack in some other games. Everybody normally has a damage multiplier of 1. It's normal damage. However, if you put pips, you assign points to this, because they're little D6 pips you fill up the D6 die with. Then if you're a specialist, you can do double damage or triple, or etc. 4 times up to 6 times damage. So everybody starts out with a 1 in 6 chance to be able to do all of these. The specialist, on the other hand, he gets 4 points at first level and 2 points every level thereafter. He gets to spread around. So you can decide, I want to be really sneaky right out of the gate. So maybe you get these 4 points, maybe you put them all in stealth. Now you're super sneaky. You have a 5 in 6 chance of being stealthy. And once you can modify all these a little bit. I'd probably start to break them down to chances in 12, based on is this really hard or really easy. But everybody can try to do this sort of stuff. Just the specialist tends to be very good at it because they very good at the ones they choose to invest in. I also have made a little house rule. I don't think I invented this. Well, I invented it probably independently, using a D12 die and giving non-specialists like an extra D12 pip every once in a while to kind of throw them a bone. Certainly in the game I played, and at one point I think our game master at that point, every 3 or 4 levels, I think he let people that were not specialists put a point in something, and I actually put a point in alchemy. I was a wizard, so kind of worked out. There is one more optional thing I promised. I'm sorry the video's long. I really wish it wasn't, but a lot of stuff to cover. And that is, these games, like I said before, they do not offer a degree of success or failure. If you're doing something like a D6 roll, it's really hard to insert something like that, how badly did you fail or succeed. There's six possibilities. Something like a D20 roll, it's a little bit easier to do that, and so you certainly can. However, I stole something, which you're free to use, because these are hot rod games, from a game called In Nomine. And so pretty much what I do is when I roll ability checks now, whatever I do, I just roll a D6 as a second die, different color die. And what happens is that gives me the degree of success or failure. The first die, whatever mechanic the game uses, tells me did the person succeed or fail at something. Then I roll this D6, and if it rolls a 1, then they succeeded or failed, just barely. Maybe something, if they failed, maybe something nice happened. If they succeeded, maybe a little something unfortunate happened. However, if you roll something like a 6, well, they failed spectacularly if it was a failure, or they succeeded with flying colors, narrate some more stuff. And I'll leave you with this, with these games. Narration. Wow, what did I drop? Narration is everything. It really is. You don't just say I'm going to do something and pick up the die and say I'm going to roll now. Just say I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to walk across that slippery looking board. Game master will, when appropriate, say, okay, you need to roll for this. Well, narrate. Well, how are you doing that? Sometimes even before he says you need to roll for this, how exactly are you going to be able to do that? So these games can be rather narrativist at times. So narrate what you're doing. Narrate what it looks like when you succeed or fail. Maybe as a game master is going to be doing more of that for the most part, but maybe they'll throw you a bone and say, okay, what does it look like when you succeed? It's up to you how to play the game, and that's a different video. But so that's it. Sorry this one went so long, but there you have it.